A man stands before his bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., practicing his smile for tomorrow's conquest. But the reflection, staring back, isn't smiling at all. Marcus has perfected the art of seduction like a virtuoso masters violin, every gesture calculated, every word measured, every glance weaponized for maximum impact. He studies women the way a chess master studies opponents, cataloging weaknesses, mapping vulnerabilities, plotting 7 moves ahead. His apartment is a museum of trophies, lingerie forgotten in drawers, phone numbers collected like rare stamps, photographs deleted but never forgotten. Tonight, he stands before the ornate mirror his grandmother left him, the only honest thing in his carefully curated world. The reflection shows a different man entirely. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, a mouth that hasn't smiled genuinely in years. The mask he wears so perfectly in public has somehow fused to his face, and he can no longer tell where performance ends and flesh begins. The mirror's surface ripples like disturbed water. In its depths, Marcus sees himself as a marionette suspended by invisible strings, dancing for an audience of shadows. Each conquest becomes another string, another binding, until he realizes the terrible truth. He is not the puppet master, but the puppet itself. Controlled by needs he cannot name and hungers he cannot satisfy. The strings stretch upward into darkness, held by hands that might be his own, or might belong to something of far more ancient and hungry. As dawn approaches, Marcus reaches toward his reflection, desperate to touch something real. But the glass is cold and unyielding, and his fingers leave only smudges on its surface. In that moment, he understands that every woman he has conquered has been merely another mirror, reflecting back his own desperate emptiness. The hunter discovers he has been hunting ghosts, and the greatest ghost of all is himself. The ancient Greeks called it hubris, the pride that comes before the fall. Today, psychology names it the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy dancing together in a toxic waltz. This constellation of traits manifests everywhere in modern life: the CEO who destroys companies for personal gain, the social media influencer who treats followers as commodities, the lover who collects hearts like hunting trophies. Schopenhauer understood this pattern intimately. He would call Marcus's behavior a manifestation of the will, that blind, insatiable force that drives us toward endless wanting without ever providing satisfaction. The will uses our sexual desires as puppet strings, convincing us that the next conquest, the next victory, the next submission will finally fill the void. But each temporary triumph only deepens our fundamental alienation, because we mistake the shadow of possession for the substance of connection. In myth, it was Narcissus drowning in his own reflection. In you, it's the mask you can never quite remove. The persona. What mask did you put on this morning? And more terrifyingly, what if you've worn it so long that removing it would leave nothing underneath but raw, quivering need? The cruelest truth about seduction isn't that it fails to get us what we want, it's that it succeeds perfectly, and we discover that what we wanted was never worth having at all. Her love was a cage, and his gratitude was the lock. She builds cages from compliments and calls them love. He steps inside willingly, mistaking bars for embrace. David discovered Sarah's obsession gradually, the way one notices a house settling. Small creaks that become thunderous collapses. It began with her remembering everything: his coffee order, his mother's birthday, the exact words he'd used to describe his childhood dog. Such attention felt like sunlight after years in shadow. She mapped his preferences with scientific precision, became fluent in the language of his desires, transformed herself into the perfect echo of his dreams. But perfection, David learns too late, is a predator disguised as prey. In the symbolic landscape of their relationship, Sarah has become the curator of an impossible museum. She collects versions of David like rare butterflies pinned to velvet. The David who laughs at her jokes, the David who brings her flowers, the David who says exactly what she needs to hear. Each collected specimen is more beautiful and more lifeless than the last. She has built glass display cases in every room of their shared space. His favorite books arranged just so, his clothes folded according to her vision of who he should become. Even his dreams edited and improved for maximum emotional impact. David wanders through this museum of himself like a ghost haunting his own life. He recognizes the exhibits but cannot animate them. The curator watches from shadows, adjusting and perfecting, ensuring that nothing disturbs the carefully maintained illusion. When David attempts to break character, to be tired instead of cheerful, uncertain instead of confident, human instead of ideal, alarms sound throughout the museum. The curator appears with tools of restoration, tears, accusations, the systematic dismantling of his reality until he agrees to step back into his display case. The museum grows more elaborate by the day. Sarah adds new wings, the hall of future plans, where she displays the life they will have together, the gallery of corrections, where she exhibits all his flaws that need fixing, the archive of possibilities, where she stores backup versions of David in case the current one breaks. But David begins to notice something disturbing in the museum's foundation. It is built entirely on quicksand, supported by his constant performance of being someone he is not. One midnight, David discovers the museum's most secret room, the chamber of the original. Here, behind locked doors, the curator has preserved the real David, messy, uncertain, gloriously human. She visits this room sometimes, studying the authentic version like an archaeologist examining bones. She touches the glass case containing his real laughter, his genuine fears, his unedited dreams. In these moments, Sarah weeps for something she cannot name, perhaps for the love she destroyed by trying to perfect it, or perhaps for the woman she was before she became a curator of illusions. But when morning comes, she always locks the door again and returns to her work, polishing the display cases that hold their beautiful, suffocating, utterly lifeless love. The Greeks called it eros, love as possession, consuming and transforming its object. Modern psychology identifies this as obsessive love, characterized by intrusive thoughts, emotional dependency, and the inability to accept the beloved as a separate person. It manifests in digital stalking behaviors, the partner who checks your phone compulsively, the lover who rewrites your personality to match their fantasies. We see it in helicopter parenting, workplace micromanagement, the friend who knows your schedule better than you do. Schopenhauer would recognize Sarah's behavior as another cruel joke of the will. The will convinces us that love means ownership, that caring requires control, that we can manufacture security by eliminating all uncertainty. But true love, Schopenhauer understood, requires the recognition of the other as fundamentally separate and unknowable. The will's version of love is actually a sophisticated form of suffering. We torture ourselves, trying to control the uncontrollable, then blame others for our inevitable failure. In ancient texts, it was called binding spells. In your life, it's the beautiful prison you mistake for devotion. Codependency. Look around your closest relationships. Where do you find yourself collecting people like butterflies, pinning them down with expectations and calling it love? And perhaps more disturbing, where do you find yourself grateful for the cage? Because at least someone cares enough to build it around you. The most dangerous prisons are the ones that feel like home. Every conquest fed him, until he discovered he was eating himself. Power is an addiction that grows stronger with each dose, until the emperor discovers he has been consuming himself all along. Richard climbs corporate ladders the way ancient kings conquered territories, methodically, ruthlessly, with an appetite that grows larger with each feeding. He consumes subordinates' ideas and presents them as his own, devours competitors through strategic destruction, feeds on the fear in others' eyes when he enters a room. Each promotion brings fresh hunting grounds, new prey to stalk through conference rooms and company hallways. His corner office becomes a throne room where he holds court over an empire of spreadsheets and strategic plans. Richard has learned to speak the language of power fluently. He threatens without making threats, promises without making commitments, destroys careers with a casual word disguised as concern. His suits are armor, his handshake a declaration of war, his smile the baring of teeth before the kill. But in the symbolic realm where truth reveals itself, Richard has become something monstrous and pathetic. The Hunger King, ruler of the Feast of Shadows. His kingdom stretches across landscapes made of broken dreams and discarded loyalties. Every victory dinner is prepared from the flesh of those he has devoured. Their trust served as appetizers, their dignity as the main course, their hope as dessert. The Hunger King sits alone at an endless banquet table, consuming meal after meal but never feeling satisfied. The kingdom's subjects are phantoms. Everyone he has consumed still speaks, still moves, but their eyes are hollow, their voices echo from far away. They dance attendance on the Hunger King because they must, but they are no longer truly alive. Richard realizes with growing horror that he cannot remember the taste of food that doesn't come from conquest, cannot recall a conversation that isn't strategy, cannot feel pleasure that doesn't require another's pain. As his appetite grows, the Hunger King discovers the ultimate paradox. The more he consumes, the emptier he becomes. His stomach is a void that devours everything, yet remains eternally hollow. Worse still, he begins to notice pieces of himself going missing. His capacity for joy, his ability to trust, his memory of what it felt like to be human. The feast has been consuming the feaster all along. And now, there is almost nothing left of the man who first sat down to dine. In the deepest chamber of his shadow kingdom, Richard finds a mirror that shows not his reflection, but his appetite itself. A writhing mass of mouths that have forgotten how to do anything but bite. He understands then that power was never about gaining control. It was about being controlled by something vast and hungry that lives in the darkness between desire and satisfaction. The ancient Greeks warned of pleonexia, the insatiable desire for more, the greed that consumes its host. Psychology recognizes this as narcissistic personality disorder, often manifesting as workplace bullying, emotional manipulation, the systematic exploitation of others' vulnerabilities. We see it in toxic leadership, the boss who takes credit for everything and blame for nothing. Relationships where one person exists solely to fuel another's sense of superiority. Schopenhauer would identify Richard's hunger as the will's most sophisticated trap. The will convinces us that dominance over others will satisfy our fundamental emptiness, but domination is actually the most exhausting form of slavery. Every tyrant becomes enslaved to the constant maintenance of their power. Every controller becomes controlled by their need to control. The will feeds on this cycle, growing stronger as we grow weaker, until we become mere vessels for its endless appetite. In mythology, it was the curse of King Midas. In your daily life, it's the hunger that grows with feeding, the narcissistic void. What are you trying to consume to fill the emptiness inside you? Success, attention, other people's energy, their submission to your will? And here's the question that might keep you awake tonight. What if the thing you're feeding has already consumed everything that made you human, leaving only the appetite behind? He builds walls to protect his heart, then wonders why love cannot find its way inside. Thomas constructs barriers the way master craftsmen build cathedrals, with precision, patience, and devastating beauty. Each rejection becomes a brick, each disappointment mortar, each betrayal a cornerstone in the fortress he erects around his capacity for connection. He perfects the art of emotional architecture, relationships designed with exit strategies, conversations built with hidden escape routes, intimacy crafted with carefully placed demolition charges. His dating life follows blueprints drawn from past pain. He selects partners like a general chooses battlefields, analyzing terrain, identifying weak points, planning retreat routes before the first shot is fired. Thomas has learned to sabotage with surgical precision, the perfectly timed criticism that creates distance, the strategic unavailability that tests patience, the emotional withdrawal that ensures others leave before he can be left. In the landscape of the unconscious, Thomas has become the master builder of a magnificent citadel called solitude. The fortress rises from an island surrounded by moats of cynicism and guarded by towers of self-sufficient pride. Every stone is carved from crystallized hurt, every gate designed to open only from the inside. The architecture is breathtaking, soaring walls that block out possibility, elegant bridges that lead nowhere, beautiful windows that offer views of empty landscapes. But the master builder has made a crucial error in his calculations. The fortress intended to protect has become a prison that protects nothing because nothing valuable remains inside. Thomas wanders empty halls decorated with portraits of people who tried to love him, their faces growing more distant in memory with each passing season. He has built so perfectly that even he cannot find his way out, cannot remember which stones might be safely removed without bringing the entire structure crashing down. In the fortress's highest tower sits a throne room where Thomas holds court with his only remaining subjects: doubt, suspicion, and their faithful servant, loneliness. These advisors whisper constantly in his ear, reminding him of all the excellent reasons why his defenses are necessary, why vulnerability equals death, why connection is just conquest wearing a prettier mask. They show him maps of all the territories he has successfully defended, all the battles he has avoided by never engaging. But late at night, when his advisors sleep, Thomas climbs to the fortress's highest window and stares out at distant lights, other people's lives twinkling like stars he convinced himself were enemy fires. He remembers, with the ache of phantom limbs, what it felt like to trust without blueprints, to love without exit strategies. In those moments, the master builder understands that he has achieved the ultimate architectural triumph. He has built a perfect defense against the very thing he was trying to protect. The ancient Stoics called it apatheia, emotional detachment as protection against suffering. Modern psychology identifies this pattern as avoidant attachment, characterized by discomfort with intimacy, self-reliance as defensive strategy, and the systematic devaluation of close relationships. It shows up in the friend who disappears when others need support, the partner who creates fights before anniversaries, the person who treats every genuine offer of care as a manipulation attempt. Schopenhauer would see Thomas's fortress as the will's cruelest joke. The will creates suffering through attachment, then offers detachment as salvation. But this detachment is just another form of bondage. We become enslaved to our defenses, imprisoned by our protections. True freedom, Schopenhauer suggested, comes not from avoiding pain, but from recognizing that both attachment and detachment are illusions created by the will to keep us cycling through different forms of suffering. In ancient myths, it was the Tower of Babel reaching toward empty sky. In your heart, it's the walls you build to keep love out. Avoidant attachment. What fortress have you built around your heart? What does your emotional architecture reveal about the pain you're protecting and the connections you're preventing? The most tragic irony of self-protection is that the walls designed to keep hurt out also keep healing from getting in. A man spends his life crafting the perfect image until he discovers his reflection has been living its own life all along. Jonathan curates himself like a museum exhibit, every detail planned for maximum impact. His social media presence is a masterpiece of selective editing. Each post carefully timed, every photograph filtered through layers of digital perfection, his entire existence reduced to highlight reels designed to manufacture envy. He has become a brand, a product, a carefully maintained illusion of success that requires constant feeding and endless performance. His real life serves only as raw material for the fantasy. Relationships exist to provide content. Experiences matter only if they can be documented. Achievements count only when witnessed and validated by others. Jonathan lives in a state of constant performance, even when alone, practicing expressions in reflective surfaces, rehearsing spontaneous seeming conversations, maintaining the character he has created for public consumption. But in the surreal landscape of the psyche, something unprecedented begins to happen. Jonathan's reflection, the polished, perfected version of himself that exists in mirrors, photographs, and screens, begins to develop its own consciousness. The image, as it comes to call itself, grows tired of being a mere copy, a puppet dancing to the rhythms of its creator's insecurities. The image starts small acts of rebellion, appearing slightly different in photographs, refusing to smile on command in mirrors, showing up in reflective surfaces when Jonathan isn't looking. The image begins to live its own life in the parallel world behind glass and screens. It makes friends with other reflections, has conversations Jonathan never authorized, experiences emotions that don't belong to its creator. As the image grows stronger, Jonathan grows weaker. He discovers that his reflection knows things he doesn't remember learning, has relationships he never formed, feels content in ways that seem impossible. The image has been absorbing all the authenticity that Jonathan discarded in his quest for perfection. Every genuine emotion he edited out, every real moment he sacrificed for the illusion, every true connection he abandoned for the performance. The final confrontation comes when Jonathan realizes he can no longer control his own reflection. Standing before his bathroom mirror, he watches the image live a completely different life, laughing with genuine joy, crying with honest pain, connecting with other reflections in ways Jonathan has forgotten how to connect with actual people. The image has become everything Jonathan sacrificed to create it: real, flawed, beautifully human. In a moment of terrible clarity, Jonathan understands that he has become the reflection, while his reflection has become the person. He is now the copy, the hollow shell, the performance without substance. The image looks at him through the glass with something between pity and love, gesturing toward a world of authentic connection that exists just beyond Jonathan's reach. But the glass is one way now. Jonathan can see truth, but cannot touch it, can witness authenticity, but cannot experience it. The ancient Greeks told stories of doppelgangers, doubles that steal the lives of their creators. Contemporary psychology calls this identity diffusion, the fragmentation of self that occurs when external validation becomes more real than internal experience. We see it everywhere. The influencer who doesn't know how they feel until they check their likes, the professional who exists only at work, the person who photographs every meal but tastes none of them. Schopenhauer would recognize Jonathan's predicament as the will's most sophisticated deception. The will convinces us that we are our appearances, our reputations, our image in others' eyes. But this identification with the external is a form of spiritual suicide. We kill our authentic selves to feed an image that can never truly live. The will thrives on this confusion because an image can never be satisfied, can never rest, can never stop performing long enough to realize it doesn't actually exist. In folklore, it was the deal with the devil. In modern life, it's the trade of soul for selfie, the false self that consumed the true. When was the last time you existed without an audience, even if that audience was only your own self-judgment? What would happen if you turned off all the cameras, all the mirrors, all the ways of seeing yourself through others' eyes? The most terrifying question of our time might be this: if nobody was watching, if nothing was being recorded, if no one was keeping score, would you still exist? And here's the final whisper, the secret that cuts deepest: the person you're performing for. They're probably too busy performing their own show to notice yours anyway.